instead of introducing the panelists myself, each of the panelists is going to be introducing themselves and an aspect of digital art. I've asked them to briefly explain an aspect of digital art that they have interacted with, and then we will go into the discussion. And I hope that then we will also have time for questions from the audience at the end. So please hold your questions and let us know. It's really special to have a panel about digital art at an art market day, because it's always a bit at the peripheries of the art market. So it's important to realize that perhaps in the next 50 years, this is going to be an art form that will become more and more at the center of the art market in general, and that there are tools coming about that are helping for that to happen. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone to Marianne, who will be discussing briefly what she is doing at AGADP.
ADAGP.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bernardine. And hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be there, and thank you for your kind invitation. Somehow I will be the voice of artists today, and to think about what is the future and the prospect of digital art and the market. ADAGP was created in 1953, is a French royalty collecting and distribution society in the field of visual arts. Then we managed all the copyright held by more than 180,000 artists worldwide. The field of visual arts represents more than 40 artistic disciplines, including video or digital art. So, ADAGP still represents digital artists from the early beginning of this art. And if we admit that this art starts with Marcel Duchamp and Man Ray, to whom we manage the intellectual property rights. So, digital art, what does it mean? In my acception, it is not, first, digitalized art. So paintings or sculpture or photograph, etc., which are digitalized, cannot, from my point of view, be seen as digital art. Second, artwork, for me, digital art is not artwork made by digital way, but which have, on a sensitive point of view, the same aspect than artworks which can be made by analog modes, and then they have to be excluded as well. I explain. A sequence of moving images and sounds, so-called video or movie, made by digital way, has nothing different from my point of view, for ADAGP point of view, than one made by analog way. Topics and stakes relating to IP rules or copyright management are exactly the same. For installation, it is exactly the same thing. So, that's why for my presentation,
It's there.
still...
No, go
oh,
back maybe.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's okay. D'accord. Thank you. So, for my presentation, I just concentrated on artwork which are initially thought and conceived and made through a digital way. I mean by using the ability permitted by digital tools like interactivity, creation by algorithms, online access, and so on. May I then illustrate this conception of digital art by some of the most relevant representative of it in the French art scene, like, as you see, Miguel Chevalier, pioneer of virtual and digital art in the 70s, Catherine Icahn and Louis Ferry and their virtual human in the 80s, Fred Forrest and Sophie Lavaux, for sure, ambassadors of the net art, Pierre Huyghe and his immersive art, and also Justine Aymar, Ange Leccia as well, and Justine Aymar for her work with artificial intelligence. as other traditional artists, painters, sculptors, photographers, and so on, if the work of a digital artist member is used on the internet, on TV, or print, or used in advertising campaign, we collect and we redistribute their royalties issued from reproduction rights, communication to the public rights, collective rights, and so on. And now I will disappoint you. From ADHGP point of view, there is still no specific issue on those artworks in terms of protection and management of copyright. With regard to the resale rights, which is, some of you know that, a remuneration related with the resale of the original items by art market professionals like auction houses and galleries, we at ADHGP observe that sales on the secondary market remain extremely rare. As surprising as it can be, this is still a very tiny market. Most of the works exist in the direct encounter with the public, and regarding the sale of a medium, there is not yet real market for the resale of the work. Primary sales and market does exist, but only very rare resale. Anyway, when time will be arrived, the legislation perfectly handle the case of the resale of these artworks, and ADHGP will manage it. So, if I recall the questions, has digital disruption upset the way we manage copyright? As you understand, my point is that for us, at ADHGP, digital art is like any of other arts, and there is no legislative topics uncovered by the law. But the word is just said, disruption. So, there is no as regard of the pure digital artworks, but what about artificial intelligence and blockchain?
Yeah, which we will be covering during the discussion in a moment.
Yes.
Exactly. So next up is Elena. So she will be describing a little bit about what she's doing at CADAF.
Yes. Oh. So it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you, Bernardine, for moderating. So we have recently launched something very new to the digital art market, which is a contemporary and digital art fair. So it's called CADAF. The first edition of CADAF took place in New York in May. We take the example of traditional art fairs pretty much, and we present digital art, very different varieties of digital art in a physical space. So we take different types of digital art. We work with video art, more traditional digital pieces, but also with virtual and augmented reality projects, blockchain projects, artificial intelligence projects. So all different kinds of experimentation. And as Marianne mentioned, the market, and Bernardine also mentioned that the market is indeed quite young. So we work with both artists and galleries and art institutions presenting their works in a setting that is best kind of adjusted to show digital art. So for me, the problem always was I was walking through the art fairs, even there are very few digital pieces that you see, but even those that you see, they're not necessarily presented in the best way. So we are trying to curate our space in the way so that you can really see and enjoy the digital pieces. And not only enjoy, but also to purchase. So we are also launching our marketplace prior to the second fair, which is actually going to be taking place very soon, in 3 weeks or so in Miami, which we are very, very excited about. So if you're in Miami for Art Basel, please come. We are also working with Artery. with providing the buyers with the digital certificates of authenticity for the works of art. And we feel that it's very, very important because one of the major concerns of the collectors that we hear is that, you know, they really want to make sure that the video or any other digital piece that they bought is authentic. So we think that that's a really good step to make sure that the authenticity is preserved. And yes. And I think that's about...
That's wonderful. We'll be, well, did you... Yes, exactly. And
yeah, these are all of our partners that we're working with. And now we're also... Did I have another slide? Yeah. So we are working on the next editions of CADAF. And we're planning to have one here in Paris. We're also planning definitely to have one in Hong Kong. So we're now working on the timings, but likely have Hong Kong maybe even this spring, and then followed by European edition, and also having the next edition in New York in the coming months as well. So it's a lot to work on, but we see a lot of interest, and we hope to be able to show and to sell as much of interesting projects as we can.
Wonderful, thank you, Elena. And the next panelist is Nanne Dekking, who is the CEO of Artery, but also the chairman of TEFAF. So please do tell us about what you think about digital art.
Thank you, Bernardine. Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. Thank you for the impeccable organization. Sorry, I'm going to take a little bit of distance from the screen because I'm technically blind. Elena, thank you for that. As Bernardine just said, I'm also the chairman of the board of TEFAF, which is, as you all know, a very esteemed art fair, but not immediately the kind of art fair where you think about digital art. Having said that, during our fair in New York the other day, we had a digital artwork, and that artwork was created by a collective of artists called Kitchen Club. What was it? Breakfast. There, you know, it was very close. And that was not only sold out, it was also the artwork at TEFAF that appeared the most on social media, which is very interesting. By the way, it was an art fair with primarily old master paintings. And I'm very excited to see the synergy that you can get now in the dealer community when you actually organize a fair where old master dealers and contemporary art dealers and now creators of digital art start to understand each other's qualities, and there's definitely a lot of synergy that starts to exist. So I'm very, very excited about that. So after having been in many panels, for example, with you, Bernardine, where I was actually the guy with the wooden box promising the world one day this will be the best cell phone you've ever seen, the product is live. So you can go online, you can look at Artie, what we're doing. We created a digital registry to ensure that relevant events in the life cycle of an artwork is recorded. And for that we use actually blockchain technology. Not because we think blockchain technology is cool, the only reason why we use it, and that's also why I'm always called the Debbie Downer of the blockchain technology, we only use it for two reasons. It makes information unalterable, and it timestamps information. It doesn't do anything by itself, like Dorit, AI technology doesn't do anything by itself. You need the input of relevant information, or you need clever people to look at data. By the way, our data in the art market are not big data. We have a relatively small amount of data, but that's just a little side note. So if you talk about digital art, what we can actually do is something that, if you talk about, so you know that we have done a lot of, we've already registered hundreds of millions of artworks, primarily now through Christie's. And what Christie's does, they actually create a record of an artwork. It's their information. And they create a statement, the statement of what was created during the moment of sale. And that information, to our opinion, comes from a credible partner. It comes from Christie's. Due diligence was done, and that's exactly what we do. We create visibility of the due diligence that was done, and we make that statement unalterable, and we give it a timestamp. So that artwork with relevant information can now move forward in the digital space forever with that information. But now we talk about digital art. And as you all know, digital art can often be seen by millions of people. It's reproducible. You can actually take the hash, put it in your, put it in your search bar, and you push enter, and then millions of people can see the same kind of art, the same artwork. So the beauty of what we've created is that you can actually give a special code to that hash. And that means that the owner of that artwork can actually see that he or she owns the actual original starting point of that digital artwork. And so what we see here is every partner of ours, whether it's Christie's or any other provider of credible information, they digitally sign the information, because you want to have a clear, visible statement. It's always public. We don't want non-public statements, because otherwise it becomes more opaque than the art market already is. We want a clear statement. This is what we said at this moment of time. And that can be digitally signed and blockchain secured. Here it's actually the Kate Vass Gallery with whom we collaborate for digital art, but they also do other kind of art, and we collaborate with them at every level, because it's not only digital art that we handle. But the beauty here is that Kate Vass could actually digitally sign off on the information, a clear statement: I've done due diligence, this is what I know today about this artwork. But now the beauty comes that also the artist can sign off on this. Also, again, not only for digital art, we will actually start to register artworks through galleries, where the artist cryptographically signs off as well. So that statement of the artwork is now in perpetuity linked to the information in the database. So here you see Kate Vass Gallery has inspected the artwork, and you also see the unique hash that only exists for that artwork. So the owner can now in the future say, I'm actually the starting point of this information. And I think we should limit, I think we should limit it for this for now.
Okay, perfect. And then the last speaker is Malo, who actually followed my brief and did one slide about his initiative. And I asked him one example. So he will be describing one example at Monart that they are taking. I hope you can tell a bit of the evolution of this conversation from what is digital art, how is it being sold, how is it being verified, and now Malo will be talking about another angle of it.
Thank you. I'm glad to present Monart. Monart is a new platform, a new financial platform that we launched actually last month. And actually we privatized the Beaux-Arts magazine offices to do 2 conferences to launch Monart. Monart allows everybody to participate to the art market growth. Well, you've known this much better than myself. The art market has been growing, but who benefited most as collectors is people having millions or billions to invest in large collections. We will allow anyone with 100 euro to start doing this. So we kind of democratize, we open for new collectors, new investors, new art lovers to participate in this art market growth. So we developed original discovery tools like a huge 3D art center with art spaces to the various collection and selection of artworks that we sell by shares. So we sell by shares either unique artworks or selection of artworks selected by our art committee or then by curators for specific selections. And people can buy as many shares as they want. Everything also is stored on the blockchain, so it's a very secure and very interesting way to timestamp, guaranteed and certify both the artworks and the transaction around those artworks. And I choose here to show one of the selection of artworks for art video. It's interesting because it allows to develop also new tools for the collector, because here, and we've had often this discussion with video art collectors, it's a bit complicated, it's very interesting, but once they have a DVD, sometimes they have a CD-ROM, sometimes they have a USB key, sometimes they have a link. So it's a bit difficult for collectors. So we are launching a large video platform so that people having bought shares of this selection can access and have a few hours of viewing to show their collection, to show them to their friends. So we invent also new tools to add value and add new services to the collectors. And so we are also in the startup village. So if you want to know more, please we'll be happy to demonstrate and to describe and detail with more information this new platform with you.
Thank you so much, Malo. And actually, I'm going to start with a question to you, because you previous to Monart were already involved with digital art in a very different way of earning money. So I think that one of the big things about digital art is a tiny market, because it's very difficult to make money with it. So how were you working with this at Digital RT before?
Yes, so 10 years ago, I started one of the very first digital art or new media art production company. And it's true that we worked more with companies that had substantial budgets for mainly two things, two areas. One was events. We created huge events with interactive screens, with laser pointers to interact with creations, sometimes doing an incredible digital art show with 30 artists for some of the big companies. And the second is permanent installation, either inside a company or in the public space. And we've done quite a few, and it's very different type of developments. Both actually visible in Paris. One is under the pedestrian bridge when you go to the main stadium in France, the Stade de France. You will see there are lights interacting with people and with the sound. And another one is behind the big station, the Montparnasse train station.
And I guess, speaking of which, when you were describing your work, you did say something about digital art or new media art. I think a lot of people say sometimes digital art, and it almost feels like new media art went through a rebranding. Elena, could you maybe comment on what is the difference? Is it the same thing? What is new media art versus digital art?
I think it depends whom you are asking, really. For our fair, I think, and in my understanding, digital and new media art are pretty much the same things, really. These are the works that are made using digital technology. I think people refer to new media art as maybe to the newer pieces that have emerged recently that are using some sort of innovative technology like virtual augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and so on. But I think it's more the matter of
almost synonymous then.
I would say so.
Yeah. And do you think it's going to be a bit like modern art, where it will be a term that people will look back to new media art and say that was the time when it was new media, that was the time it was modern, but actually now it's no longer modern? What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I think it's I think it's really not about the name, frankly, but it's about the adoption of the concept within the more traditional terms. So how it's going to be adopted to actually collecting and purchasing. And I was speaking, for example, we met this morning with Sylvain Levy, who is a collector of digital art as well as traditional art, but. We were speaking about the digital art, and it's interesting because I think one of the main issues that is left, well, there are a few issues, but one of them is how actually collectors display digital art at home. So there are a lot of complexities connected to that. Do I just show it on my TV screen? Is it too geeky kind of to have, you know, a TV screen with digital art at home, or I show it on my computer? But luckily now there are new technologies that are pretty much like standalone pieces that look very contemporary and sleek, and you can, you know, plug in your art in it and enjoy it. And hopefully, you know, soon we'll have more of that too.
Nanne, you wanted to say something? Or
Well, I'm just thinking about all these different technologies, that when new technologies or new mediums come up in the history of the arts, usually in the beginning people start to describe the medium used or the kind of paint technique to describe a movement. I think this will get its place in history, and I think in the end we don't talk about digital art anymore. But that's just my personal opinion.
well, I think that's in other industries as well. People say that the digital department of companies at some point will no longer be a digital department. It will be everybody has a digital element. Maybe art at some point will also have a. But actually, Nanne, who are? I know that you bought one piece of digital art recently, and do you, when you were at the Kadaf Art Fair, etc., who are the collectors that you're noticing attending these types of places? And is it something that you think is different from the type of collectors that are at TEFAF?
It is still different, but I'm such a firm believer in synergy. And as I say often about digital art, what I actually like about it is that it also makes people angry. Because every art form so far where people got angry when artists started to create something that was not in your comfort zone, it made people angry. And that's good. That's a very good sign. Yes, I did buy digital art. I bought a CryptoPunk in the most traditional way possible, because I looked at the printout of the actual CryptoPunk. And that little fellow looked exactly like my son. So I texted my son and I sent him just the image of that artwork, because you don't want to assume that anyone looks like your son, right? And he immediately texted back, "That's me." So I thought, okay, I'm lost, I'm going to buy this. So I brought the first CryptoPunk, but it was such a great adventure because, you know, I'm a collector of well, our kids are African American, so our collection is geared towards African-American art, but also old masters, because I'm an old master guy, but I can only afford like a Thomas Couture mediocre portrait and not the best of the old master world, but still art that I love. And this CryptoPunk, to my opinion, a portrait of my son, was presented by the artist to me in the most traditional way, because they delivered the artwork and they sort of created the printout of the artwork, which is not the actual artwork. Because what is actually the artwork? That's something I would love to discuss with you later today. Is it the hash? Is it a specific code? In my case, it is actually the specific code, because otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here. I firmly believe that we can create scarcity in environment where art is reproducible millions of times, but this unique code we can give can actually create scarcity, and every marketplace needs scarcity, or scarcity, you say in English. It's my Dutch American. But anyway, so the artists came to my office and they brought the artwork in an almost created version, and I got two pieces. I got a printout, a framed printout of the CryptoPunk, the portrait of my son, and I got a framed envelope that contains the unique seal that actually has the code to my artwork. So how much confusion can you create? And I love that. I love that.
Well, I think that ties really well with you, Marianne, because you were saying that you investigated a little bit about these tools for your work, and that I guess you are working with trying to find that original inception point and all of the places where it's being licensed or used or sold, etc. Did you find that these tools were usable in your working process today?
Regarding blockchain, indeed, we closely follow all the development. We met a lot of companies in that field, and to see what they could make. Obviously, we are convinced that the technology works, for sure. But sorry to play that difficult role of to be not absolutely enthusiastic, but just I remain really still carefully on the real now efficient use on that technology. In our field, in visual art, from my point of view, blockchain can be could be relevant for specific application, as you mentioned, like proof of anteriority for artworks, very important on the art market. But just regarding on that, ADAGP used in the past offer a service of deposit to the artists themselves in order to make the proof of the content and the date, a certain date of an artwork, a project, in order to provide them the proof in case of legal suit on who belongs or not the artworks. And we offer that service during 10 long years. And at the end, we observed that no artist came to us to recover the deposit and to use it on for a legal suit. So on that point, the proof of anteriority in our field, I don't mention things for movies or I don't know, ID for TV programs or so, but in the field of visual arts, my experience showed that proof of anteriority is not a key issue. That's my experience. Also, blockchain, for sure, could be relevant for managing, for example, the resale right. It could ensure the traceability of the transactions, and through the art market, again, it is a remuneration provided by galleries and auctioneers for the subsequent sale of artwork, original items, not reproduction exemplaries. And the thing is, in that case, I'm not a tech people, as you know, but for that, to make sure that blockchain ensures the traceability, we need that each people involved in the transaction plays a game and has interest of transparency. First, interest is for the artists themselves, and then collective management organization. And on the art market, the question is, have all people interest of transparency? That's why sometimes...
It's an easy answer to question. Easy question to answer.
So that's why blockchain, for me, has that issue to be sure that everybody will make the things. And if not, like any other technology tools, as powerful as it is, cannot work if people miss to make the commitment.
I completely understand where you're coming from, and I think I've heard this very frequently from the market about the difficulty of it. And I feel like Malo and Nanne, you've gone for two different ways of working with it, because Malo, you're almost creating a virtual space disconnected from the players, where you have the control and you're making sure that people can buy and sell. It's not live yet, right? So it's still conceptual. And then Nanne, you're working with all of the entities within the market to try and get them to participate, as mentioned.
So Marianne is a very fair point. But will everybody collaborate? No.
Why not do like Malo and make a space?
I think it would be very interesting to define collectively a standard, because otherwise each of us, and there will be 5,000 different blockchain users, and we should collectively try to find a common ground where, as you mentioned, I mean, every people is part of the equation, and the artist, the gallery, the collector, because also that way you could collect the follow-up rights, which is a big issue also. But just one thing, Monart is live.
Sorry,
Yes.
sorry, it's live, yes. But I mean, as in, you still are raising your ICO now, no? And things
Yes,
like that?
we are developing it, and we are launching it in Beijing in November 28th.
Okay,
So-
okay, so
No, but to your
hot
point,
off the press.
So of course, it's what I like. What you're doing is that everything is visible. You know, blockchain, as I already said. If you don't make visible and make public what's actually put in the blockchain, then you're lost as a
But
marketplace.
you said the answer was simple for whether the art market wants transparency.
Well,
What
because-
is the simple
well,
answer?
Not everybody in the art market wants transparency. I actually believe the art market is not broken at all, because most people actually do due diligence at a very high level. And when you're not afraid of the research you've done, why not make it public? And by the way, we never can even know who the owner is. The ownership relationship, the client relationship always remains with the creator of the record or with the artist, not with Artery, because we don't want to be and cannot become a marketplace. But well, first of all, it was already said before, it is not true that you need only one blockchain platform. I mean, how many digital platforms do we have? Why all of a sudden for a new technique we need one platform? Many events can actually live on different blockchain, events in the life cycle of an artwork. And by the way, what you also know is the biggest players in this field are already teaming up. I'm actually sort of looking here around my inner circle here. And we realize we should not reinvent the wheel. Wherever we can collaborate, we collaborate. But it's not true that, because there's always this misconception, people think about blockchain and then they think about cryptocurrency. For cryptocurrency, you need indeed a different kind of approach with blockchain. We have a more old-fashioned approach. We just use the technique to show the supply chain. That's what it's used for in the container industry. That's what it's used for in the metal.
But what about the point made that actually the artist didn't even really reference it back in 10 years? So
Well,
what's the point of having it?
Because
if
they
then-
never had a digital platform where they can look at. That's why I believe in these big platforms, and whether it's Artery, I hope there will be more. I believe ArtNet was one of the best, the biggest help to the art market ever, although the art market still doesn't really realize it and doesn't like ArtNet. ArtNet was an incredible product. And you only wish these kind of big platforms success. But now when you're the artist and you've created something and you can actually cryptographically sign off on an artwork, of course you're going to track your work. Nobody will go, excuse me, but nobody will go to an office somewhere in Paris in the side street, oh, let's see if they maybe tracked my artwork. You know, these kind of things should be public. That's why big art historical institutions want to work with us. That's why a lot of, you know, when we launched Artery last week, there were the three big auction houses were present with their leadership. They were giggling, they never see each other, because they all believe this could actually help us. And I know many artists, and they actually believe it will help them. And then you have to do it in a very curated way, you know? You have to make sure that it's a credible gallery
Well,
that's...
okay,
sorry, I'm
that
talking
brings
too
me
much.
to
Yeah.
no, but I think it leads to the
See it in
next
your eyes.
question I was going to ask, which was about intermediaries, right? Because the art market is all of us who are in the middle, who are doing things in the middle. And for example, Elena, you're working directly with artists at the art fair. You don't even have to be with a gallery. Does that suddenly mean that galleries will not be necessary in the digital art space?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think the galleries are still very helpful, and I don't want to talk about... I don't think that any of the traditional art players are going away anytime soon. But indeed, we work directly with a lot of digital artists because, first of all, there are just not that many galleries that deal exclusively with digital art. And for the traditional galleries, digital art is usually a little bit of a side project, so it's not in the first row, not necessarily something that where they make most money, frankly. So I think it's a really great opportunity for the digital artists to start being a proper part of the art market and start selling their works. For digital artists, blockchain and other platforms that actually provide visibility for what they do can all of a sudden become a unique tool to represent themselves, and in the base case scenario also maybe even get royalties on the works that they have made, which is kind of makes sense for the digital art platforms like .art, even the one that we saw recently, where an artist can create his own .art website and become
it's cut up.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, so become having their face and their work online, and also represent himself or herself properly online. So I don't know. I don't want to talk about the disappearance of the intermediary, but for me it's really great to see how very young artists start really discovering their collectors at our fair, and there are artists who are selling their works for the first time, but then there are artists who've been selling for a while, but they really need more collectors.
But you're dealing with a very unique kind of art, where, artery will never say that an artwork is authentic. We don't have an opinion. By the way, we always need a statement from someone who says that. In your case, it's unique, because that code is unique, and that is the actual artwork already. So, but then the seal of approval is cut off, and they sign off on it as well. Because what we start to realize here, that I was very much intrigued by the first or the second panel, when talking about Barnaby's, for example, you aggregate artworks or sellable objects from many different auction houses and from many different online auctions. And you actually add value to that. And now all of a sudden, when you started to talk, we are actually gonna work with evaluation company, etc. You start to add value to what you're doing to that particular artwork. And that, to my opinion, is again an event that should be recorded. It was sold there, and then the next creator of a record is actually Barnaby's, because they add value and at least more information to that particular object.
It's working again. Okay. So I see what you're saying, but then there are digital intermediaries rather than physical intermediaries. There are the platforms like yours that are going to be the ones that are the new intermediaries of this space. And I guess, is there enough margin in those artworks and the prices those artworks are getting to have more than one? Is it that you need to have just one intermediary of a digital platform or a digital art fair, rather than having what actually happens in the other media, where you have more intermediaries and more margin?
I will just say one line, but for my traditional job, where are the margins in the art market anyway? If you look at an auction where $120 million artwork is sold, everybody thinks, whoa, they made a lot of money. They did not. They made much more money last week at actually what was perceived as mediocre sale at Sotheby's and Christie's, because the margins were higher. So the margins are small always, and you can only make money in this trade if you actually expand the marketplace. And it needs to expand in an enormous way, because hardly anyone buys art. It's such a small market.
That's what you're working on, isn't it?
No, but it's a very good point, and I completely agree. I mean, we are trying with this new financial offer to expand the market, because, I mean, someone with €100 walking into a gallery will usually not be received very well. So we really open it, and both for shares of artwork, share of selection, but also with a new art token that we launched also last month, and really to try to expand the number of people, of art lovers, of investors that will want to and be attracted to this art ecosystem, and then bring them to buy also an artwork, and then really enter them a new space that they have not entered at this stage.
But isn't there an issue of trust there? Because the same way that you were talking about the CD-ROMs, USBs, all the different technology platforms, what about if Mon Art doesn't exist anymore? Where does my €100 go?
There is a very important point about blockchain, and I'm not sure people in this room know. On blockchain, when something is registered on the main blockchains, it's public, which means if you have an artwork registered on the blockchain, anyone on Earth can check it. there are public tools, free open source public tools. One is called Etherscan on the Ethereum network. And you can check without Monad, without any one of us, that it's effectively on the blockchain that it has done. Same thing for a sales transaction. You can check directly that it has been done without us. So this is a lot of trust. It's not hidden in our books somewhere. It's public. So not every information is public.
Well, that's the problem, right?
Exactly.
Because there still is some stuff that you will
it
be
can be a
privately
hash, it can have different forms, and but the information that the artwork is on the blockchain, for example, the artist can check it himself. He doesn't have to trust us. So it's an important level of trust, this public side of the blockchain.
Okay, I want to take the conversation into a new direction, but just before that, I want to check if there are any questions from the audience about the scarcity of digital art, the way that the digital certificates are happening, etc. Any other questions? Okay, so what I want to move on to is this new media and talking about the way that artificial intelligence is being used to create artworks. Of course, there was a really controversial sale of the AI artwork at Christie's last year with for 450,000 euros. An artist from here in Paris, collective. So it's controversial. It's making people angry, Nanne. Why is it controversial? And what is maybe Elena? Do you want to first comment on why GAN art and AI art is controversial?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions that are attached to the artificial intelligence art. So a lot of people think that those are actually machines that are creating art, and that the artist is kind of aside and is not taking part, which, as far as I understand, is not exactly the truth. So the artist takes a very important part in creating and is the creator pretty much of the artwork, and the artificial intelligence is a tool. It's an algorithm that he or she is using to create something. The artist is both actually a curator, because he's picking one of the final results that the algorithm is producing, and hopefully he's also the the developer who is writing the algorithm. So
but often not. So sometimes, I mean, the French collective that created the work was not the writer of the algorithm that was used.
Yeah, so that was the controversial part about it. Even though the code was open source, so it's also the question of how we actually, how we think about it. But
Well,
It reminds me very much of the Salvator Mundi, by the way. If I may bring in an old master painting.
And both
What did the artist
450